I think that's, I think a lot of us felt that throughout the year. It just felt tired, and this is going to really, I think, give a big boost in the organization. So I think everybody here is excited.
You call it a youth movement, and I think that that's exactly true, right? Everyone's saying the Sean McVay coaching tree, look at all the success that came from the guys that coached under him. And I think that that's the exuberance that we also feel here, right? He's coming in with a ring. He, like you said, Pete, just that newness, an offensive-minded coach, something different. So I think it'll be fun to see.
All right, well, Kevin O'Connell is walking to the podium right now. Let's toss it over to that so you can hear from the Vikings' newest head coach.
Mark and Zgyi on the outside.
And that is Kevin O'Connell right now taking a picture with new GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, along with the ownership of Mark and Zgyi Wilf, as we'll get started shortly as the Vikings welcome in a 10th head coach in franchise history. And Pete, going to a complete reset with this team because they're getting two brand new pieces, both young pieces to lead this organization.
They are, and they're familiar with each other. They spent a little bit of time in San Francisco together, and I talked to Kwesi yesterday, and I think he's super excited to have this offensive mind in the building. They're very, very excited.
All right, here we go.
Well, I'm incredibly excited to be here today to introduce Kevin O'Connell as the 10th head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. Kevin is a strong leader with a great vision, great communication skills, and innovative football mind. As a former player himself, he's able to connect with players and has a great reputation for developing them. He's incredibly bright with a calm demeanor through adversity. He is well regarded across the league for his genuine personality almost as much as his football acumen. He's committed to building a championship culture through positivity and purpose. One of Kevin's best attributes is his ability to communicate complexity in a simple and relatable way. Like some of the best football minds I've been around, the way he talks about football is very visual, simple, and clear. He understands team building at an extremely high level, and I'm excited to form that partnership with him in building a championship team. When there are big decisions in life, a lot of times you like to think back, was there a moment when you sort of knew? And I went back thinking about the journey, and I was thinking about the second round interview. We were talking about offensive philosophy, personnel, player evaluations, and it was like I was talking with one of my, my close football friends who I've spent hours and hours upon hours with, and it was, this was an hour into the interview. It was just so natural. Everybody else that was in the interview said it right after. The connection, the energy was incredible there. And, upon reflection, I think in that moment I probably knew myself. I'm extremely pleased with the thorough and detailed process we went through. I think we interviewed multiple future head coaches, but we're excited about the guy sitting next to me and what we have. And with that, I'd like to officially welcome Kevin and his family to Minnesota. Thank you, buddy.
I want to thank everybody for being here today. Obviously, it means so much to have so many members of this organization, both ownership, former players, the media that will support us in what we do, coaches, fellow coaches that have come in already. It's such an unbelievable opportunity for me to be sitting up in front of you today. I'm incredibly humbled by this, to know that you get the opportunity to lead an organization that has tremendous history, an organization that's had tremendous success on the field and in this community. I first want to thank Zgyi, Mark, and Lenny Wilf, the entire Wilf family, the search committee that obviously had such an impact on me with some of the connections I was able to make very, very quickly. The entire Vikings organization, many of whom I've gotten already a chance to meet here today. It seems like such a special collection of people, of leaders, of human beings that are ready to help communicate a shared vision to everybody in this organization and help deliver that message both inside this building and outside this building. I've experienced firsthand how passionate Vikings fans are. I've been on the visiting sideline at US Bank Stadium twice, and I can tell you it's one of the hardest venues to play, especially for an opposing offense in all of the NFL stadiums that I've been to. But the stadium is great, it's special, but the fans that make up the crowd at US Bank Stadium is what will mean the most to me. Knowing just how passionate and how much they care, you care about us playing great football, competing at the highest level, and trying to win every game we play, trying to win championships here is the goal. But it takes a great fan base to do that, it really does. It takes great ownership, and I've felt connected from our very first Zoom call with the entire Wilf family, members of the front office, obviously Kwesi, and our ability to connect from day one. We'll get into that here in a second, but just an unbelievable opportunity. There's so much to there's so much to be drawn to this opportunity for me. Like I said, the amazing ownership. There's a very talented roster already in place here. A lot of really, really good football players that will play, that have played at a high level, and I'm so excited both in all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams, to get to work with these guys and help put them in the best possible situation to have success. We're sitting in an unbelievable facility right now, and I can tell you that around the NFL, buildings like this are not the norm. It's an incredible, incredible place to come to work every day. It provides an unbelievable atmosphere to develop a culture that'll be very, very important to me. But the facility here should be one that the Wilf family, you guys are very proud of, and it is something that should give us a great chance to have a winning edge to go to work every day. The chance to partner with Kwesi was one of the huge draws to this job. Once I found out that you were going to be the general manager, I too remember that second interview out in LA and getting the opportunity to kind of, in the interview process, sometimes you end up talking about things that are very, very important. Culture, team, what you want the organization to look like. What are the important things that you'll draw upon of things you've done in other organizations with success, and maybe some where you've learned how you might not want to do things. But when we got to talking football, we got to talking our shared core visions of what we want a football team to look like. It's our job to take the team we put together and put it on the field and best execute game plans and put them in positions to have success. But there's got to be collaboration. That's the number one thing that I think that we've talked about, that we're so excited about, is through the process of getting to know each other. We've known from day one that we're going to be able to collaborate, communicate with one another, and build a culture here that the players will feel. They'll feel a connectedness between, obviously, your staff and our coaching staff, and that will only lead to the players feeling as connected as they've ever been to a coaching staff before. It's one of my main goals, and I cannot wait to get going with our football team. My coaching style is built on some real core foundational values. I choose to be consistent as possible. You win, you lose, you do a lot of things in this league, but if you're consistent in your approach, in your process, it is very easy to come to work on Monday and figure out how to make things better, figure out how to go win the next football game. If you've struggled the previous week, go fix it. But you do that through your process that's been in place long before you ever reach that adversity. I think it's important to have a relentless passion to teach, lead, and motivate, because that's what we are in its truest form. Is we're teachers, we're motivators, we're leaders. And then if we're able to connect with our players, they become the same, and everything can take off from there. Consistency is everything that we do in this league. It's too hard to win. It's too hard with the challenges you face throughout a season to not allow your players to see the same exact guy standing up in front of them every single day. It'll be a hallmark of what I want to do here as my first time being a head coach. I think we'll set a tone and create a culture here where players will want to be around us. They'll want to be around their coaches. They'll want to be in the building. This special facility is only special if there's players inside it working on a daily basis to have the success that we're going to help them have. I've talked to a handful of players already, and I cannot wait to get started with these guys when the rules allow, but I can tell you that these guys are excited to get going. They're excited to meet the coaching staff we're in the process of putting together. I'm so excited about the guys we've already been able to get on our staff and put those guys in positions to impact our players, just like I've been put into many times by the great head coaches that I've worked for. We'll finish out that process as quick as possible and then move on and catching up with the rest of the league in implementing our systems, teaching our systems to our coaches so that those guys can then go transfer that information to their players when they come back. To Vikings fans, I just want to let you know you'll get everything I absolutely have on an every single day basis. Knowing how hard it is to win in this league and having come from an organization where we were just able to accomplish the ultimate goal in winning a Super Bowl, I know what it takes. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And I know how hard it can be, but I know if you've got the right kind of people with you, the right ownership, the right leadership structure with you, and I know we have the right kind of players in this building already, we can accomplish a lot of really special things. I want to acknowledge the strong history of this organization real quick. We've got some legends in attendance today. Legendary Coach Bud Grant, Randall McDaniel, John Randall, two Hall of Famers that I have so much respect for. Scott Studwell, I just spent some time in my office with, and hopefully we get him back around the facility a little bit more now that we're moving on from some of the difficult times we've experienced the past couple years. I asked him if he would maybe be part of our first tackling circuit because he looks like he can still tackle most of the guys on our roster. And then obviously Pete Bercich, who's not in here right now, but I know he's a major part of our alumni and a big part of what we want to have. We want as much of the former Vikings greats, the alumni, to be a part of what we do here. We want them back around our players. When you have such a great culture and history to an organization, that makes it all the better if you can connect both the current and former parts of what makes this organization so special. I do want to take a moment to thank the Los Angeles Rams, the leadership structure there from Mr. Kroenke to Kevin Demoff, Les Snead, and then especially head football coach Sean McVay. He's had a huge impact on me the last 2 years, but even going back beyond that, I've learned so much from him about the type of team and culture that I want to build, but he is truly a remarkable man, a remarkable leader. And I hope to bring a lot of those characteristics to our football team here that he's instilled that just helped us win a world championship. Lastly, I want to thank my family. My beautiful wife, Leah, my son, Caden, my daughter, Quinn, my son, Colton. I put you guys through a lot the past 6-7 years. You guys have sacrificed so much. And it's led us to this day where we get to sit here, and I'm going to try not to get emotional, but we get to sit here and look at each other and know that you guys have been every bit a part of getting us to this moment. Leah, you're going to be an unbelievable head football coach's wife. I cannot wait to see you connect with not only our team, ownership, but this community. It's going to be a special thing for me to watch. My mom and dad, Bill and Suzanne, you guys have been there every step of the way. We've got to experience a lot of things over the last week or so, a lot of joy, and I couldn't imagine doing it without you guys. I love you guys so very much. Leah's parents, Kit and Becky, absolutely loved having you guys a part of this journey with us, and your support, Kit, being a former player and a coach yourself, your support has meant the world to me, and I take with me all the conversations we've had over the years. They mean the absolute world to me. Trace Armstrong, my agent, you're part of the family now. You always have been from day one. Just such a mentor for me and such a special relationship for me as well. I hope the message of my enthusiasm and excitement comes through, but I can tell you firsthand, I cannot wait. From the moment this press conference ends, we're going upstairs and we're getting started, finishing our staff, like I said, and then we'll get to implementing all the great things we're going to do here. But with that, I think we can open it up for questions.
Coach Mike Max from WCCO TV and radio. They always talk about that first meeting and setting the tone. What will the first meeting be like for you, and what tone will you try to set when you finally got those 53 or those 83 players in the room?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I really do. I've thought a lot about that meeting. Luckily, we've got a few more days till that will happen. But first and foremost, you got to establish right away what your football philosophy and culture is going to be. I'm talking on the field, the type of team we want to be, the type of characteristics we want to have as a team, the things that matter in our preparation, the things that matter in how our players will absorb the systems that we're going to implement. And then trying to go win football games starts from day one when you start talking about consistency of communicating and collaborating with those guys. They got to know we care about them from day one. I will not hire a coach that will not connect on a one-on-one basis with their players in their rooms. It's very, very important, but our players will feel that from the first meeting all the way through our first time getting on the grass into training camp and on into the season.
Hi, Kevin. Courtney Cronin, ESPN.com. When you were going through the interview process, how did you sell ownership and everybody that was a part of the committee on how Kirk Cousins is going to fit your vision and what he can do in this offense to bring this team a championship?
Well, Courtney, I think Kirk's played at a very high level, and he's done a lot of really good things throughout his career. I know who he is as a player, and I know what he's capable of, and part of our job as coaches is maximizing a player's ability to go out every single Sunday and have success. So I feel like that's going to be an advantage for us as we build our system offensively, make sure we really focus on the things Kirk does well, which I do think are a lot of aspects of playing the position, and help him on a daily basis, connect with his team, lead us, be completely a quieted mind quarterback that can go play because he's talented enough to go do that, and putting him in the best possible situations to have success.
Chris Thomas in St. Paul Pioneer Press. I guess I'll follow up on Cousins. I'll ask you, Kevin, and then Kwesi as well. I mean, can you guys, with all the rumors swirling around, can you say that Kirk Cousins will definitely be the Vikings quarterback in 2022?
Well, I know he's under contract, and I'm excited to coach him. We've already started thinking about how we're going to build those systems for him and our other quarterbacks, and really our, the tremendous skill group we have, our guys up front. It takes all 11 to move the football on offense, to run it, to throw it, to score points in the red zone. But I'm anticipating Kirk being a part of what we do.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I'm excited that he's excited to coach him and lead him, and we're focused on building the team around him that set us up to succeed the best we can.
Hey, Kevin. Eric Smith from Vikings.com.
There you go.
Hey, do you plan on calling the offensive plays? And if so, how has your career as a player and a coach prepared you for that role?
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, I do plan on calling the plays. I think it's funny you ask that because I've used this joke before, but my career as a player provided a great platform for me as a coach because I did spend a lot of time watching games from the sideline. But I will say that with that becomes the ability to see the game in a way that I feel very prepared to call the game. I feel like I've been around one of the best play callers in the NFL over the last couple years. And obviously the system we run here will have a lot of characteristics of what we did in Los Angeles. The ability to have that attacking mindset, the ability to utilize our offense at the line of scrimmage. And with that, becomes you have to have ownership of what you're doing to call it. You have to have ownership of what you're doing at the quarterback position to run the offense. And I feel very strongly about the circumstances, situation here to be really prepared to do that.
Kevin, Dave Campbell with the Associated Press. What are some of the things when you were a player that you learned about connecting or being disconnected with coaches that you sort of on your mind now that when you're in that role and you're trying to do the reverse?
Yeah, Dave, it's a great question because it's something I think about a lot now that I'm on this side of it. The best coaches I ever had, I felt like they cared about me. Felt like they cared about not only the production on the field, but the process at which we got to that point. I was always a player that needed to improve in something, and when coaches took the time to not only tell me what I didn't do well, but show me how to fix those problems, or at least go about the process of improving. And I think that's what we ultimately are as coaches. Identify things you can help a player do better, but then more importantly, give them the why and how of how they're going to get to do that. I think that's what makes the greatest coaches in this league who they are. Play calling and all that other stuff is great, but if in its purest form, you can teach the game, teach what you're asking them to do, understand how hard it is to some of the things you ask these players to do sometimes, but then give them the why and give them a reason behind everything you do. These players will take off and they'll go run with it, and that player ownership is ultimately what we're striving for.
Hey, Kevin, Mark Craig from the Minneapolis-St Tribune. You coached Stafford for a year, you coached Kirk for a year. wondering what, similarities do they have, if any, and what differences, if any, do they have?
Yeah, Mark, they have a lot of similarities when it comes to the physical nature of throwing the football. I think those guys are elite throwers. Accuracy is the number one requirement in this league as a quarterback from a physical standpoint. We can talk a lot about makeup and obviously the ability to process at the line of scrimmage and play fast. But if you can't be accurate with the football, it becomes very difficult to consistently move the ball for an offense. And I think Kirk, the one thing I've always noticed about him is he's incredibly accurate with the football. He plays with great rhythm and timing and precision. And I think we can build an offensive system like we had in LA to take advantage of that skill set. Matthew Stafford's one of the most talented players I've ever been around. I have so much respect for him, obviously from a physical standpoint, but also that makeup and that ability to process and do a lot of things at the line of scrimmage. And I see Kirk being able to do a lot of those things, and I see us being able to build an offense to maximize what he does best, which happens to be what a lot of quarterbacks, want to be able to do best. A quarterback-friendly system where they can have an attacking mindset, aggressive mindset, but I use this term a lot, on our terms. On our terms to go play the game we want to play it and keep it on our terms. And then when it's time to go make plays to win a game, our guys feel really good about going to do that.
Hi, Kevin. Joe Schmidt from Channel 5. Welcome to Minnesota. My question is, how long have you been thinking about becoming a head coach? And it's well stated you're 36 years old. How did you talk the selection committee into saying that you're ready?
Well, I think that's a good question, Joel, because in the end, I think to truly get somebody to commit to you for this type of opportunity, you better truly feel you're ready. And I do. I do absolutely feel like I've been building up to this opportunity for a long time in my career, both as a player and a coach. I have not wasted a moment to absorb some of the great coaching and players that I've been around. I think you can pull from a lot of people in your career things that will help you be the best possible version of yourself as a coach. If you're not doing those things, I think that's, the type of arrogance that will not only lose football games, but it'll force you to lose a job every now and then. You've got to be able to rely on those around you. You got to be able to absorb the best parts of those leaders that you've been around. And in the end, you've got to be yourself. You got to be authentic. You got to be real. And the good thing is I believe wholeheartedly that I'm ready for this opportunity. I believe from a fundamental standpoint of teaching the systems that I want to run in all three phases will be incredibly competitive. And then I think ultimately it was about finding the right organization, because I do think, it's been said before, I do think you win with your people, players, coaches, ownership, staff, the leadership structure here. Everything is in place for me to feel great about not only my readiness, but my ability to go implement a culture and a plan that I want to do.
Hi, Arif Hassan at The Athletic. A lot of people associated with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan have used the phrase illusion of complexity.
Yeah.
Is that in your lexicon? What does it mean, and how does it help?
It is. And what does it really mean in its purest form? We're doing a lot of things that are simple for us, but maybe a little bit more difficult for a defense to defend. Simple as things starting out looking the same but are different. That illusion of complexity where teams think there's a lot of offense that they're defending, but really we're only doing, small details here and there just to change the picture, change angles, give ourselves an advantage wherever we see fit, both in the run game and in the pass game. Using tempo as a weapon, things that people have seen our offense do in LA that they will absolutely see our offense do here in Minnesota.
Hey, Kevin. Sam Ekstrom with Purple Insider. You've obviously talked a lot about the offensive side of the ball. I'm curious if you have a vision along with Ed with what you're going to be doing on defense, and who are some players on the roster that get you excited about that side of the ball as well?
Yeah, I definitely have a vision of what I want the defense to look like and play like. First and foremost, the core characteristics of playing good defense, which is guys flying around, a great tackling group. We're going to force turnovers with how we play from a scheme standpoint, but that's an effort. That's an effort thing. That's playing with great effort, sustaining that, finishing plays, making it about the football. That's part of our core football philosophy. Number one, first and foremost, it's all about the ball. I think you lose games turning it over as an offense in this league before you ever give yourself a chance to win them. But defensively, the greatest defenses in this league not only stop people, but they take the ball away. And that'll be a huge part of what Ed and our defensive staff tries to build from day one here. I think from a coverage standpoint, what really drew me to Ed Donatel was his ability to teach a system that I know is very hard to play against as a quarterback and as an offensive coach. I've experienced it in Los Angeles. There's definitely different forms of it going around the league right now, but obviously Ed's experience with Vic Fangio and his connection to that system is something that really drew me to him. And then obviously the person that he is was huge for me. But as far as our players go, I see impactful players at all three levels. I really do. Starting in the back end with Harrison Smith, I think he's the perfect player for the defensive structure we want to play from a standpoint of the coverage, how we want to make all things look the same. He's got great length. He's got great instincts. He's going to be a problem for people in the middle of the field and around the line of scrimmage. He really always has been, speaking from experience. Obviously with the linebackers, with Eric Hendricks and Anthony Barr, those guys have long since been huge issues in this league for people defensively. I think there's ways to use those guys and allow them to play with an attacking mindset while they're still responsible for the things that they're responsible for defensively. And then I think we've got players both internal and on the edges defensively, or defensive line-wise, that can impact the quarterback. But when it all works together, when that coverage can make it cloudy for the quarterback and that rush is one more step closer to getting home, and those backers are doing everything they can to force negative runs on early downs and finish plays in the pass game, it can be a beautiful thing, and that's really what we're hunting from a defensive system. And then the schematics from there, week in and week out, we're going to game plan in a way to try to take away what the opponent does best.
Kevin, Ben Gessling from the Minneapolis-Star Tribune.
Hey, Ben.
To kind of follow up on the defensive side of things, what do you anticipate the scheme looking like? And it specifically is a three-man front something you're planning to run here in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think from a base standpoint, you could look at it that way. But I think somebody threw out the stat to me the other day. With everybody really living in 11 personnel nowadays, I think, depending on the defense you talk to, 81% of the time they're in nickel defense, which essentially is just a 4-3 with a nickel in the game instead of a fifth DB, I should say, in the game instead of a third linebacker. So a lot of times a big thing, and kind of going off of the last question there, a big thing is being multiple with your fronts, because I know as an offensive coach, if we know where you're going to be, we know where you're going to line up, that makes it pretty easy at least to design things to attack angles, understand how you want to run the ball, how you're going to protect. But when you change that picture and you're forcing opponents to deal with multiple fronts during a game, during a drive in some cases, that can be a real weapon for a defense. Pairing that with some really good things on the back end, it's kind of what we're hunting.
Larry Fitzgerald, National Programming Network, Larry-Fitzgerald.com, and congratulations on the job with the Vikings. Can you share with us the difficulty and the challenge of what you've just achieved, not only to win a world championship, but to pursue your dream to be a head coach and to have two jobs literally? Talk about the good and the bad and how you were able to do it.
Quite honestly, it was, one of the more challenging months of my life, going back to when the playoffs first started, but probably one of the most rewarding, Larry. It really was. And I think through that whole process, the number one thing I always wanted to maintain was my focus on the task at hand, which was week in and week out. Trying to win playoff games in this league is tough, especially versus opponents you've already played. The preparation can be that much more challenging when you've played a team, in some cases, twice already, like we had with Arizona and San Francisco. We'd already played the Buccaneers one time, and then obviously we were playing the Bengals for the first time, but in our last game that we would possibly play this year. So it was an incredible challenge, but I can tell you that my number one priority was always winning that next game, winning the next game. I kept talking to our quarterbacks about, each individual aspect of winning the next game was all that mattered. Our preparation would lead us to giving us an opportunity to go play with a quieted mind and have success. And I was talking to myself as much as anybody, and it was about maintaining that process that we had from the beginning of training camp. And then in the end, it was about going out and doing everything we could to try to win those football games. But it was challenging because especially as of late, recently, this great opportunity that's out in front of you. And that's where I really relied on the collaboration with Kwesi and the rest of the organization here to obviously carry out the vision that we started talking about during the interview process. I think that's why the interview process is a special time, because if you're truly meaning what you say and you're truly believing what you say, and that's truly your vision for how you want your staff to look, the culture to be built, you feel comfortable allowing others to start to carry out that vision for you. And they've been phenomenal here, supporting me throughout that whole time leading up to and past the Super Bowl. But I can tell you, when I got here last night, when my family and I arrived, there's nobody more excited to turn the page and get going than me.
Kevin, Chad Graff here with The Athletic.
Hey, Chad.
When Kwesi was introduced, he mentioned that he didn't like being, kind of known as the analytics guy, even if that's followed him for a long time. But I guess I'm just curious from your end, how do you view analytics as fitting into the head coach's role?
I think it's an incredible tool that we have at our disposal. It's a weapon if it's used the right way, but you got to have people to help you. I think when you're a football coach, the number one thing sometimes that can be a challenge is dealing with too much information sometimes. And we've already had great dialogue about that. He's got a great way about presenting that information. He's had success doing it to some really, really great football coaches he's worked with, but presenting that information in a way where it can be used as a winning edge for an organization. And when we can collaborate and work together using the tools that we'll have, and analytics definitely is going to be one of them, I think we can be the best possible version of the Minnesota Vikings that we can be, combining that with some of the other things that we'll want to do as an organization.
Kwesi and Kevin, I guess you talk about collaboration. Here comes the draft. Here comes free agency. Maybe you want to start this, Kwesi. How do you two work together in partnership on those plateaus?
Side by side. We talk about a shared vision a lot. We talked about it through the interview process. We talked about it when he got here last night. That's what we're about. We know where we're trying to get to, and then really it's just figuring out where you are and what next steps to take to get there. And that involves him being right next to me, understanding every step of the way what we're trying to accomplish, what moves, what are the highest lever points you can take to get where you want to go. And that's what excites me the most about it. And I want to be pushed. I don't think that I have every answer. Just like the people I surround myself, he's going to be one of them. We want to push each other, come up to the best decision, build consensus, and end up where we want to be.
Hey, Kevin. Dane Mizutani, St. Paul Pioneer Press. Collaboration's a word that's been used a lot throughout the process. How much do you take into account maybe the previous regime and how players felt that collaboration maybe fell short? Or do you just simply turn the page and not talk about what the past at all? Yeah, I don't really think that's something that I can spend a lot of time thinking about. Just knowing the opportunity in front of us. I think the word collaboration speaks to the two guys you see sitting in front of you, and I think doing our job for the people that will work for us, our coaching staff and our personnel staff, will be letting those guys feel that immediate connection between the two of us, which will only allow our groups to connect. And then before you know it, the players will be back in this building, and they're going to be the number one group that feels that connection and collaboration, because it really is a thing. I know the word's been used a lot, but it's being used a lot for a reason. And I hope people and fans understand that. We both believe in it. We have that shared vision. And I've been a part of something, and I know he has too, where when it's existed, a lot of really good things can happen.
Hey, Kevin, Will Raggets, SI.com. You look at the advanced metrics, and they indicate that running the football is not as efficient as throwing the football, but you talk to players and coaches, and it's the physical and mental aspects of running the ball and kind of imposing your will. How do you view the importance of a successful running game in the modern NFL?
Yeah, I think it's about balance, and I think it's about understanding clearly how you want to go win a football game each and every Sunday. You don't play against every opponent the same way. You've got your core foundational aspects of your offensive system. The run game and how you run the football is certainly a huge part of that, and you want to be able to, as you said, impose your will. You want to be able to run the football because there's going to be times you have to. The way defenses want to defend your pass game, we use the term, they're daring us to run it. We got to be able to do it. We got to be able to move people up front. We got a really, really good running back here that we got to put him in positions to use his skill set and have a lot of success, and I feel really, really good about a plan to do that. But running the football and the marriage with the right kind of pass game is what makes an offensive system what it is. We've talked about that term, illusion of complexity. You got to be able to do both. You got to have balance, because if defenses have to defend both things and they don't know it's either or until long after they would like, we got an advantage right there to go do a lot of things on that particular snap that'll help us go score points on that drive.
So, Kevin, Reggie Wilson, Care 11.
There he is.
Hey. You mentioned culture a lot in your opening statements. What was it about the Rams culture that allowed for such success, and how do you plan on bringing that specifically here to the Vikings?
Yeah, it's a culture built on players and coaches being connected. The communication that exists in that building, coach to coach, player to coach, coach to player, is second to none, and it provides a platform for everybody to feel they have the ownership of the why. That's what goes on in that building, is from top down, the why is being explained on a daily basis. Players are taking that information, having ownership of it, and then when they go out on Sundays, it's really about them. It's really about them being put in positions to play with a quieted mind and go never be asked to do things that they're not capable of. But if we're doing the right things offensively and defensively and on special teams, if we get the right kind of players, which I feel like we have already, and we're going to add a lot more, we'll have a great chance to coach those guys up and let them go do exactly that each and every Sunday. But it starts with that culture. It starts with the ability to have the players feel that connectedness in the building. We're going to be starting to try to build that from day one here together, and I think when we do that, our players will feel it and they'll be ready to roll.
Time for two more.
Jim Rich here, Fox 9. You talked about building yourself up to be a head coach and to take that step. What is the biggest step going from an assistant coach to now being the head coach in your mind?
Yeah, I think you're in a supportive role for everybody in the building in a lot of ways, except the head coach. When you're an offensive coordinator, or you're one of the position coaches on the staff. And now I'm that person in that role where I will rely on a lot of the coaches and great people around me, just like a lot of the great coaches that I've coached for have relied on me. And that's one thing I've always taken away from it is truly when the entire group is connected, you can rely on one another. But make no mistake about it, I'm excited to stand out in front of this group. I'm excited to stand in front of this team, lead from the front, and they're going to get my very best every single day, and I think they'll feel that. And in the end, I want these players to know that I'll care about them. They'll get my best every day, like I said, and we're going to put them in great positions to go out and have success.
Hey, Kevin, Mark Paulos from KTTC in Rochester over here.
Hey, Mark.
You talk about how this team has a lot of talented players and there are a lot of pieces in place. Do you think this is a team that's really that far away from achieving its ultimate goal?
I don't. I really don't. We've talked a lot about that. That's one of the things you look for when you get these opportunities is where is this current team at? And then obviously what type of plan can we put in place to go accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish? And I think there's a lot of reasons, you just said it, on both sides of the ball that make me really excited about implementing the systems and the processes that we're going to implement that these guys can then take and run with as players. And can't wait to see the leadership of this group. I think there's great leadership on this team already, but be put in a position hopefully to take this thing over, have that player-led ownership of a team, let those guys go lead the rest of that locker room, and then I see us really growing this thing day by day together. I really do. Yeah. Once again, thank you guys for coming out. I really appreciate it, and love to my family over there. Love you guys. Yeah, absolutely, man.
And that is the press conference with new Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell wrapping up here at TCO Performance Center as the new head coach of your Minnesota Vikings meets with the media for just around 40 minutes, asking questions about the future of this franchise and where things are headed starting in this 2022 season. Guys, one thing that stands out to me, the 3 C's that he used, and that was collaborate, communicate, and also culture. Pete, what stands out to you about what we just heard from Kevin O'Connell?
Well, I mean, I think what stands out is how he mentioned how he coaches at a certain pace, right? He brings us, one of the strengths that the GM was talking about, Kwesi was saying, he can convey complex ideas very clearly. you listen to him for like 2 minutes, and he has this, he's got a pace about him, and he's very clear, very articulate, and that shows me that he's done this before, that he could sit down with these players and in a very short period of time give them exactly what they need to know, not too much, not too little, and then let them know their why. And I love that he said that, ownership of the why, which is, why are we doing this drill? Why are we doing that drill? What do we need to do to win? And if he can convey with that type of clarity to these players what he wants to do in the system, then I think that it's going to be fantastic.
Just like many people might have been thinking at home, we said it here while we were listening, you even said it, a toned down PJ Fleck, perhaps, right? And I beg to differ on just the 3 C's. I counted 7, so I think we're sailing the 7 C's, right? He has collaboration, communication, culture, connection, consistency, calling the plays. I thought that was a huge thing. And Cousins. That was the big question. They said that we believe that we're going to build this right now around him. That may change. But we know now, for instance, whoever he brings in now of offensive coordinator, that person will not be calling the plays, so he will be. And he had this confidence. I'm adding that 8th one, that confidence about him that I'm ready for it, I'm going to do it, and I'm excited to do it. So I don't know. Pete, you've been here before where you've seen coaches come in, go, but you've also been a player and a coach yourself. He resonated with you, I could tell.
Yeah, he did, and that's kind of that's a situation. You talk about trust and building trust of your players, getting them to take ownership. The job of the coach is to make a player better than he thinks he can be, right? That's the whole point. So you're automatically at odds. That means that, I'm going to be on your rear end, I'm going to be doing this, but the player understands why. He's not taking that personal.
Sure.
My coach doesn't no. I think you're way better than what you're showing.
They see something in you that you don't see in yourself. And
that's exactly right. And that's the beautiful thing with coaching and with players is no matter who you are, what background you're from, what you've done, when a player can take whatever you teach them, go on the field, execute at the highest level, and then come back and you can get back in that defensive huddle after series and say, I told you, we did it, and that builds a connection that lasts forever. Yeah. And these guys, a lot of guys, they have their favorite coaches and as soon as football's over, well, they don't care. They still continue to talk, and that's a bond that can be built, and it's very rare.
Time now to go back to the indoor practice facility, and that's where Gabe Henderson is standing by with new Vikings general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the guy who was a very, very important part of this hiring process for Kevin O'Connell. Gabe, take it away, my friend.
Thanks, Hobie. Kwesi. Kevin already threw you under the bus. He said, I guess after lunch, you guys got lost going back to your office. Oh, yeah. Is there any truth to that?
Oh, that's absolutely true. I've lived a pretty simple life since I've gotten here, between the Omni and the facility and then to the lunchroom, doing a lot of work, and that's how I prefer it. But there's some different ways to get around the building that I haven't figured out yet, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. And now we're here with Kevin being announced as the head coach today. You've been a part of that process, and you were there. You flew out to L.A. A few weeks ago. What stood out to you in that interview process that ultimately landed him here today?
I mean, everything you just heard. I think I had high expectations for that press conference, and it exceeded them. Again, he's just incredibly, he's good, comfortable in his own skin, incredibly intelligent, not in a way that, imposes a certain thing upon you, really communicates ideas really well. He's just an incredible person, incredible leader, incredible communicator, and we talk about vision a lot, from a personnel standpoint, but also from a coaching and scheme standpoint. And I don't know many coaches who have more, thorough and sound vision than him, really connected to the why behind it. And I hope the fans are as excited as I am to welcome him as our head coach.
Well, what type of energy do you think he'll bring? We were just talking about, he's just sitting there, but now he said he wants to get going once this press conference is over. So what kind of energy do you think he'll bring?
It's going to be incredible. It's going to be infectious. We're both positive people, and I think it's going to be prevalent in this building. We really believe that you should be able to come to work, get better, but do it in a joyful way, be in a positive growth mindset way, and I can't wait to establish that culture with Kevin.
Next steps?
Oh, man, we got a lot to do. The first thing to win the NFL is to know your own roster, so we got to have those conversations more at a high level, get these coaches here, get them transition, start focusing on the draft. You start looking at the schedule, and it's pretty compressed, but I love a good challenge, and so does he, and we're ready to get started.
Man, ready for you guys to get started, too. I'm looking forward to it. I know you got to get back upstairs and do some work. Back to you, Hobie. Appreciate you.
All right, Gabe, thank you very much. That combine is coming up very quickly with the NFL draft after that. So much to absorb from the around 40 minutes that new head coach Kevin O'Connell spent with the media. And for more perspective, let's go to our perch location, and that is where Paul Allen and Tatum Everett are standing by. Guys, what stood out to you about what the new head coach had to say?
Well, Hobie, it's really an exciting day here in Eagan. And I don't know about you, Paul. This is a moment Vikings fans, as well as us, have been waiting for. And it really was worth the wait. The shared core vision that Kwesi just talked about, the buzzwords that we heard during the press conference, the why of things relating to players, being a teacher first and foremost, those things really stuck out to me. And it's nice to hear both of them being on the same page.
Yeah, and with the words collaboration and culture and playing into the why, you know, there was one thing the new head coach Kevin O'Connell said when he was going through star players for the team. He mentioned Anthony Barr. And, you know, from Eric Hendricks at Vikings.com or just wide-ranging speculation is that Anthony's not going to be on the team next season. If they're going to go to a 3-4 defense, he collaborates to make big plays, including against Kevin's Rams this year at US Bank Stadium. He's a great culture guy, and the why to a 3-4 defense has to include Anthony Barr. So I'm not saying it was an all-out tell he's going to be on the team. I hope he is. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that the media did a good job pressing him about his defensive philosophies, where he wants to go. And I really liked how he talked about the fact that being multiple is so important because he's behind one of the best schemed offenses. And so to see that and to know that's what I'm scheming for, it's a nice perspective that he can add to Ed Donatell, the new defensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's a terrific take, in my opinion, because if you go to the Super Bowl, now granted, Sean McVay is calling all of the plays, but Kevin O'Connell is his offensive coordinator. And on the biggest drive of their careers, the final offensive drive for the LA Rams, they found a way to throw it 4 times to Cooper Kupp, the best wide receiver in the NFL, and he caught it 4 times and led to the victory. I mean, and when Cooper's getting all the coverage. So that has some mastery to it. It involves multiple looks and stacks and a lot of motion and things like that. Excellent take, and that's what you're going to see with your offense.
Yeah, there is so much to be done, so many new things to learn about these 2 new faces here with the Minnesota Vikings. But Hobie, we'll send it back to you for now. We'll check it a little bit later.
Thank you very much to you and PA. Pete, Bercich, Don Mitchell, Hobie Artigue here as we bring in the new era of Vikings football with Kevin O'Connell. And you heard them mention Sean McVay's coaching tree. That is one that has had a lot of success in the NFL whenever you look at some of the guys that he has brought with him through the ranks. You're talking about Brandon Staley with the, not San Diego anymore, Los Angeles Chargers, still gets me to this day, but Matt LaFleur with the Packers, Zach Taylor with the Bengals, who just coached against Sean McVay and the Rams in the Super Bowl, and then now you have Kevin O'Connell here in Minnesota. And taking a look at the offense of the Vikings versus the Rams last year, very, very comparable, except for on third down. We'll show you in just a little bit, but here's Kevin O'Connell's resume right now. 5 seasons spent playing in the NFL. Majority of his playing time came in New England, but 7 seasons as a coach in the NFL, 3 years as an offensive coordinator, 4 years as a quarterbacks coach, along with Kirk Cousins for that 1 year in Washington. But you bring up the Sean McVay coaching tree. Pete, is it as simple as saying, well, you know what, we're going to just take what we did in L.A. and bring it here to Minnesota?
I think the key with all that is what can you bring and knowing what you have in place. And you've seen a lot of coordinators, you know, they move from one town to another and then one team to another, or, you know, a guy gets promoted and becomes head coach and wants to implement exactly what they did in where they were previously, but you don't have the same players, right? You don't have the same type of players here as you did in Los Angeles. So his ability to work around that and to have an answer for it, I think, is key, right? You may not have all of the same pieces. You may be missing some things. He definitely doesn't have the defensive front that he was practicing against every day in LA. So, those are the things. Can he tweak what he knows? And it just speaks to the system. It speaks to how do you go about your business? How do you organize things on a daily basis? How do you convey a message? Those guys have all obviously taken that from McVay and translated into success. And those other coaches, they've done well.
Yeah.
You know, especially so when you say, you know, there's 2 coordinators in 2 years under him going on to be a head coach. It's more than just a tree per se. It's taking that knowledge and the fact that Sean McVay and whatever the Rams had special going on there in terms of that collaboration and communication that allows someone to grow. So hopefully that is not just buzzwords, that they'll come here and actually do that. But what I really enjoyed about that too is, you know, you heard PA say, he said, some of the names, oh, maybe Anthony Barr will be here, but he also mentioned Harrison Smith, Eric Hendricks. You know, no one wants the defense to be forgotten about, and he made it quite clear that it is not going to be, and they may not have some of the pieces. I mean, you can dissect the defense far better than anyone else, but they may need to get more pieces on defense. But what I really liked is he has that calm demeanor, and I think Kwesi said it was the calm demeanor through adversity, knowing that adversity is going to come. So you have Justin Jefferson, you have Dalvin Cook, you have Kirk Cousins on offense, and so when the defense can come up to par, it'll be nice to see how we can make that all mixed together.
Let's go back to the indoor practice facility, and that's where Gabe Henderson is standing by again, this time with Vikings COO Andrew Miller. Gabe, many people in the front office very excited about this hire today.
A lot of people excited about this hire, including Andrew Miller. And Andrew, you've been a part of this process from start to finish. What stood out to you about Kevin O'Connell, which ultimately leads him here today?
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about both Kwesi and Kevin. And, you know, Kevin just showed it, right? He's an absolutely talented football coach, but, you know, probably an even better human being. And, you know, from a culture standpoint, a communication standpoint, ultimately what we were looking for was leadership. And he presents that, and it's going to be a great pairing with him and Kwesi.
What did you learn personally about this process? Because it was kind of new for a lot of people. So for you, being in this process, understanding how things work, what did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to be part of a lot of hiring processes over the years. This one's a little bit different, right? It's accelerated because of the timing of the league rules and when you can actually talk to coaches, you know, because of the playoffs, and it just compresses the timeline quite a bit. But, you know, it was an incredibly fun process to be a part of because you get to see some of the most talented individuals on this planet when it comes to football, and we're pretty fortunate we got 2 of them to come join us.
When you flew out to LA, I know you guys flew out to LA early on in the process. What stood out to you about that? I know that was the first time you guys met him in person, right?
Yeah, we met Kevin in person that day, and it was bringing someone to life, and it's important to do some of those things in person, and to have him, you know, come to life outside of a Zoom screen and really get a full scope of, you know, how and unbelievable he is as a football coach. And, you know, Kwesi had him walking us through some game film, and, you know, it just immediately kind of changed the tenor of things as he, you know, got animated and, you know, talked about the film.
Yeah, when you see a guy's passion like that light up, what does that do for you?
I mean, it very quickly makes you understand all the things that Kevin was just talking about as being a teacher and a communicator and a leader of players. You can see immediately why people connect with him, which was really fun.
Well, I know a lot of fans are excited, and I know for you on the business side, our job is to get them into it. What stands out to you, and why should fans be excited about these new hires?
Yeah, I mean, I think fans should be excited. You know, these are 2 incredible people that are passionate about taking the Vikings to the next level, and you know, from every single person we talked to in this process, everyone talked about how difficult an environment US Bank Stadium is and how we have the best fans in the league. And so when you hear people over and over and over again talk about how difficult it is to play here in Minnesota, you just know that it's a special environment, and our fans need to keep bringing it.
Yeah, well, with the fireworks from the fans and then the fireworks on the field, I'm sure everyone would be excited. Thank you, Andrew Miller.
Absolutely.
Back to you, Hobie.
Gabe, thank you very much. You mentioned the fireworks on offense, and that's something that the Vikings are hoping that Kevin O'Connell is bringing from the Rams, because their offense really led the way on that Super Bowl run. However, the Vikings were effective on offense last season, right behind the Rams whenever you look at some of those statistical categories, right behind them in total yards, behind them in passing yards, ahead of them in rushing yards, of course, because of Dalvin Cook. Cam Akers, the Rams running back, hurt for a vast majority of the season. Scoring, a little bit further behind, about 2 points, but third down, a huge difference between those two. The Rams averaging almost 44% on third down, with the Vikings going around 36%. One thing that Kevin O'Connell mentioned, Dawn, was the word balance, even though the Rams were known as a team that liked to throw the football. In your estimation, what does balance look like for you as he takes over to start calling the plays for this team?
You know, I like how he really used it in terms of the running game as well, right? Well, when you have someone like Dalvin Cook and you have the balance, that's great. But let's expand it a little bit more, right? You have a guy like Justin Jefferson who is just kind of just drooling now that he has an offensive-minded coach that can take over. I think maybe my only concern when it comes to balance is the offensive line. And I know I sound like a broken record, but Chris Cooper, who's coming in now as the O-line coach, has his work cut out for him. And now he's never been in charge of an O-line. He's been an assistant in Miami and in Denver. I'm not saying he can't do it. I just said he has a challenge thrown at him right off the bat, because if it is Kirk Cousins again, we know that drill. He's going to need some protection.
Pete, you look at the two offenses on paper, veteran quarterback, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins. Whenever you look at talented wide receivers, Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. Are there some correlations that Kevin O'Connell could carry into this team?
Absolutely. You know, and you talk about balance with the running game. And as you noticed, if you watch the Rams, especially as they got into their playoff push, that they did run the football
Sony Michel
more effectively.
against
Sony
the Vikings.
Michel toward the end of the season, right?
Yeah.
He started, you know, he was starting to get productive, you know, a couple weeks before they played us, and that really carried him through up until really the Super Bowl game. Cincinnati has a very good defensive front. But that's what he means. In college football, you play to your strengths, right? You are what you are, and you go, and that's what you stick to. In the NFL, you have to be able to attack weaknesses, and that's what he's really talking about. You can't just come into a game week after week and say, we're just going to throw the football. We're going to find a way to throw the football. When you may face a defense that's fast but not very good stopping the run, and you also have a guy like Dalvin Cook, you know, standing behind. And the other thing I like about this Rams and the style of offense is it's very explosive. They had 10 plays of 50-plus yards last year, led the league, or were at the top of the league.
I think it was top 4.
Finding guys that can do that, whether it's Dalvin Cook or whether it's Justin Jefferson or whomever it is on offense that can break those plays, and they don't have to be long throws either. We saw a lot of OBJ as he worked himself into this Rams offense. A lot of them were short throws and then run after the catch. Well, we got guys that can run after the catch too. So that's what I'm excited about, being very, very explosive on offense, being balanced, and knowing when to run the ball and being able to. And I agree with you 100% that Chris Cooper, the offensive line coach, is the most important hire that he's going to make, because that's where your protections come from, and you got some talent and you have some guys that you're going to have to develop there.
Well, this Vikings alum is very excited about the future for the Purple, but he's not the only one. For more, let's go back to Gabe Henderson, who's standing by live with another familiar face, John Randall.
Yeah, he's one of the most polarizing figures in Minnesota Vikings history, John Randall. And I know you're shaking your head. No. But, John, you've been a part of 2 head coaching changes during your time playing with the Vikings. Now we got another one post-playing career. How are you feeling about this new regime?
You know what? It's a younger, fresher organization, and with the GM, the head coach, the younger, and I think that's the new thing with the NFL, and that's a fresher ideas, fresher mind, fresher thinking, and I'm excited about it. You know, to be a young player today in this game, to have coaches talk the way they do now, and that coaches 36 years of age, man, my coaches were 50s and 60s, and to have a fresher, younger coach who can really relate to the guys, man, it's just great.
Well, we all knew you had a motor with the coaches that you had, but having a motor, like you said, with a younger coach, what do you think that would have did for your game, and what do you think it's going to do for these younger guys here?
I think one of the things is that he can relate to the guys, and when you got a coach, you know, he saw his 3 kids there, he can relate to everyday problems that the guys are going through, and having a coach who can understand everybody, all the different personalities. You got older coaches, nothing against older coaches, but they don't really understand the different personalities of the guys today. And I think he understands that, and he can relate to that. And from watching him, he's got all the energy in the world to come to work every day. And I mean, like he's saying, when he's done with the press conference, he's going upstairs and already get started working on this. And man, I'm excited for our organization. Man, it's wonderful to see that we are keeping up with what's going on in the NFL with the young coaches, fresher mind, fresher thinking. Man, we're right there on top.
Yeah, the goal is to get back on top and win a Super Bowl. So, John, I appreciate you today. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the future.
Skol, baby, skol. Don't forget Purple Friday.
Purple Friday. Back to you, Hobie.
This is Fox 9 News at 5.
Well, if you're looking for Fox 9 News at 5, it's coming up at 5:30 as we continue to break down the hiring for the Vikings of their new head coach, Kevin O'Connell, a new era for Vikings football. And for more perspective on the purple, let's go back to our Perch location, and that's where Tatum Everett and Paul Allen are standing by. As you continue to absorb that press conference, what's running through your minds, Tatum and Paul?
Thanks, Hobie. You know, John Randall talked about Purple Friday. I thought it was Purple Thursday for this press conference.
Yeah.
You know, looking, the vibes here, though, make it feel like a Purple Friday. And I think one thing that I noticed right in the beginning, and really playing off of what John Randall was just talking about, is Kevin O'Connell seeing the excitement that he was going to have when he gets into the room and it's going to be his first meeting with those players. He talked about how he wouldn't hire a coach who couldn't connect with players one-on-one. And I think that relatable, genuine sense from Coach O'Connell today was something that really stuck out to me.
And one of those coaches is Chris Cooper, who played football at the University of North Dakota. Pete Bercich, the analyst on the Vikings Radio Network, I thought made one of several salient points when he talked about the hiring of Cooper and the importance, because the Vikings head into the season beginning with Christian Darrisaw here and Brian O'Neill there. And that's the best tackles tandem we've had, if Darrisaw stays healthy, since 2009. So that's a great starting point for O'Connell's offense. And, you know, the offensive line forever is a talker here, and the staff he's going to put together has a lot of new names. Keenan Mccardell, very well respected as a wide receivers coach last year. He's back. But those coaches and just relatability, like you said, very important.
Yeah, when you think about this offense and where we're going with that in the future, you talked about, or you heard him talk a lot about scheme. You talked about his connection with Kirk Cousins, and he talked about building a system around Kirk and what he's able to do, the connection he has from their time in Washington together. He just seems like he really is excited to just hit the ground running with this particular group of players.
Well, I had the opportunity on my 9 to noon radio show on KFAN today to have former teammate of Kevin's, Matt Castle, former Vikings quarterback for a couple of years. He was on in the final segment because he played with Kevin in Kevin's first year, 2008, with New England. And you see, Kevin was drafted in the 3rd round. He had a phenomenal combine, ran a 40 at 4.6, which is super fast for a quarterback. And they drafted him to beat Matt. You know, so that was the premise into their meeting each other. Matt won the job, but they became tight friends like this. And Matt said that he knows already from when he started with Kevin to where they are now, Kevin's a born leader. And Kevin, even though he was drafted to win that backup spot to Brady and usurp Castle, he didn't get it done, but he handled it with aplomb, and he grew from it. And Matt remembered that and just had glowing things to say about our new head coach.
I got a nice little chuckle out of the fact that he said, I will be calling the plays, I will stand on the sideline, but that's kind of funny. That was my career. I stood on the sideline as a backup for so long that I could see things from this angle better. It's how I watched the game and learned the game. And so that was a nice little reveal we got to see into maybe a little bit more of what's to come from this new Kevin O'Connell offense and how he does assume the play calling duties, but also takes a step back and is talking about relying on other coaches. He knows now he is the head coach. He's got to rely on his assistant coaches to now do what he used to do as an assistant coach. So it was a nice mindset.
Yeah, there are one of two ways to go when you're in Kevin's position, because Kevin at San Diego State University, he lit it up. I mean, to get drafted in the 3rd round by Bercich from San Diego State University, this ain't Joe Burrow at your spot, LSU. So he comes in ballyhooed and with high expectations, then he gets beat. So there are one of two ways to handle it. Do you become negative and make it about you, or do you learn from it? Clearly he learned from it.
Definitely. I think that is a very clear indicator that learning and being a sponge is top priority for this particular coaching staff. Hobie?
All right, Tatum, Paul, thank you very much. Let's go back down to the field, and that's where Gabe Henderson is standing by once again. This time with a guy who knows all about the salary cap, some issues there that the Vikings will have to figure out heading into this season. Rob Brzezinski standing by with Gabe Henderson. Gabe, take it away, my friend.
Appreciate you, Hobie. Rob, we were talking off camera. I like to refer to you as the logical guy behind everybody's decisions. And the decision was made recently that Kevin O'Connell is the new head coach. Your thoughts being a part of that process?
Man, it's all about the people, first of all, and it's just evident what a great person he is. Obviously smart, but what really impressed me was a clear vision and a detailed plan, and we're in good hands between him and Kwesi, no doubt.
When you listen to that interview, when you listen to the press conference earlier, it doesn't do anything but energizes you.
Yeah.
What kind of energy do you think that'll bring this team?
Well, I think hope, and maybe it's a renewed hope, and I don't mean that from a standpoint that we didn't accomplish a lot of really great things, but I think there's just a lot of excitement and hope, for the future, and determined to get this right and win a world championship.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, and I know you've been a part of this organization since 1999. 5 head coaching changes have happened since you've been here. What have you learned through the process of hiring a head coach from then until now?
I've been blessed. It's crazy. I've been here for 6 of the 10 head coaches in Vikings history, and I've been through a lot of processes, and you can get a lot more information, a lot more data, a lot more statistics and all those things, but it still comes down to finding the right person, the right leader, and then projecting that person to be able to go into that next seat and lead this team.
I know, you have to look at it from an objective standpoint, hey, these are the points we want to hit, but from a, personal standpoint, what have you learned just through this search process?
That's a great question. Number one, there are a lot of really great coaches, aspiring head coaches. I think there's others in the pool that are definitely going to get to, to that stage. And then I would say the importance of diverse thought. When you talk about diversity, you may talk about gender, color, all those types of things. But one thing in talking to so many smart, experienced general manager candidates, head coach candidates, diversity of thought, the way people think differently, have different perspectives, is it's important.
Well, we got that here now, and next steps moving forward, we got to build that championship culture. How do we do that?
Well, we're going to get to work on that, and it's cliche. I've been blessed to be here a long time. This is my 30th year. I've been in our stadium for every home game. Our fan base, there's no fan base like it. We're on the road. We represent in every stadium. Our fans are so passionate. They love this football team so much. We just want to win a world championship for them. They deserve it. They've been waiting a long time.
Rightfully so. Hobie, back to you.
All right, Gabe, thank you very much. Still much more to come. We're going to take a quick, short break. But here's what some fans are saying via tag board on this new hire of Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell.
This is Vikings, a new era.
Well, a lot of people are excited about what the Vikings offense could look like with Kevin O'Connell taking over. Pete Bercich, Don Mitchell, Hobie, Artigue, getting you ready for this new era of Vikings football with the 10th head coach in franchise history now in place. And guys, we talk about the two offenses, but also the leaders of the offense, and that is the quarterback position. Kevin O'Connell did some great work with Matthew Stafford this last year, leading him all the way to the Lombardi Trophy. Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, still put up some great numbers in another season with the Minnesota Vikings in 2021. Looking at them side by side, passing yards, Stafford, third most in the NFL in the regular season. Cousins was top 10. Their interception and touchdown ratio, though, both very impressive. Kirk a little bit more impressive, though, with that 33-7 passer rating, too, higher than Matthew Stafford. Whenever Kevin O'Connell was asked about those two quarterbacks and comparing those two, he said the physical nature of the game that those two play with is what jumps out at him. Pete, is it any stretch to think that what Kevin O'Connell did with Matthew Stafford could translate to Kirk Cousins as well, because they have spent time together?
Yeah, I mean, he said a couple of things that really, I think, stood out, and one of them was accuracy. So for all you folks at home that love to, rank quarterbacks and how they're going to go in the draft, rank them by accuracy. And Stafford was very accurate, and we've seen Cousins, and that's, I think, the one key in that whole list of stats that we just saw. His completion percentage is going to need to come up a little bit. Now that comes down to protecting him. That comes down to him just knowing the offense itself, when to throw to the hot, when to do certain things. I think he can do all of that. And so for Cousins, accuracy is huge. Now the turnovers, we saw that with Stafford. Stafford did turn the football over. Cousins is, I think, a little bit more protective of the football in that regard. So I'm very, very excited with this system and see how quickly does Kirk Cousins not only buy into it, but just start to, how do they build it around Cousins and what his talent set is.
I also like that he specifically said, too, that this is going to be a culture where we talk to our athletes one-on-one. And we've already heard, like in the past, that Kirk Cousins didn't really have that. He had to request a Thursday meeting. So he already has familiarity with the head coach. He already knows this guy. What I also liked is they called him a quieted-minded quarterback. So let's work to Kirk's strengths and not make him someone he's not. We know he's accurate. We know that he can be in a good rhythm. We also know maybe he can get a little rattled if the protection isn't up to par. So if you already know this and you know how to go forward, I think there's already pluses when you have an offensive-minded coach who already knows a quarterback.
Pete, and he knows the quarterback because they spent that year together in Washington. In retrospect, how big can 1 year be between a quarterback's coach and a quarterback? Now it's head coach and quarterback.
No one knows a player better than their respective position coach. So I think he knows absolutely what Cousins is capable of, what makes him tick, how he thinks, how he sees the field. So I think that piece in and of itself, the fact that the two of them know each other that well, is gonna allow them to really hit the ground running. They're gonna be able to connect on that piece, and for Coach O'Connell to say, yeah, I know Kirk, and we want to keep him around. I can't wait to get to work with him. I think that bodes well for everything. He knows how to push his buttons. He knows how the man thinks. He knows how to calm, get that mind quiet. I mean, I can't wait to see whether or not he can accomplish that with our guy, Kirk Cousins.
Well, also there seems to be an affinity anyway. I mean, you have fellow linebackers that you play. When someone plays your position, right, it doesn't matter if he had 6 passes in the NFL. That's what we keep hearing about, right? He was drafted by the New England Patriots and played in the league. Granted, 6 passes, who cares? But you've been around it. When you're a fellow quarterback and now you're a head coach and you got a quarterback, you kind of speak an unspoken language sometimes. It's got to be that way, especially how it is, right?
Well, the hardest part when you transition from being a player to a coach is empathy. Because you can't, as a coach, you can't have any, right? Yeah. You know how these guys are feeling in that third week at training camp. I mean, all the training camp's not what it used to be, but it's putting yourself in the place of the player and mentally, and that can be a good thing if you know how to handle it. But you still have to be that demanding, that demanding of a person that you hated about your other coach, right? Your other coach was always about business, always watching film, always never wasting a minute. And it was just annoying as hell when you're a player, but you have to turn into that guy. when you make that transition. So Kevin's been coaching for, obviously long enough that he left that, way behind. And again, it's the nice thing because a player can always just sit back in the meeting room and go, yeah, but you never did it.
Well, this guy has.
That's
He
exactly
has.
my
So
point.
I think that's just I think that's another arrow in his quiver, so to speak.
Well, he is the head coach that was officially hired this week, but also the Vikings making some move on the assistants front as well, getting a new defensive coordinator in Ed Donatel and also another defensive mind in Mike Pettin to be the assistant head coach, also hiring a tight ends coach, a running backs coach / run game coordinator, a quarterbacks coach, also an offensive line coach, a defensive line coach, and also 2 more assistants as well on the offensive side of the ball. I know we chatted about this yesterday, Dawn, about how it's a rookie GM and a rookie head coach. Will there be some kind of veteran presence? And on the defensive side of the ball, that's where the Vikings also need to address some things, too, with how they finished the season statistically last year. What do you make of bringing in 2 guys who have seen a lot of football from the defensive perspective in to help that side of the football?
I absolutely love it. And not only do they come in with a lot of experience, but big time head coaching, right? Defensive coordinator. So you have to balance out the newness with some NFL pedigree, shall we say. And I think that that's exactly what's done. And then when you bring in D-line coach Chris Rumpf, he's coming in most recently from the Bears. And you talk about the little arrow in your quiver. Robert Quinn, he's worked with players and really has seen quality on the defensive side. So I think, when you look at all 3, Mike, Ed, Chris coming in on the defensive side, I like that. And I think it was needed. I think there is some gravitas that had to be done with that. And now I wait to see what happens with the offensive coordinator.
Well, that's, then you bring up some great points. Rumpf, being in Chicago, he knows what the coordinator is going to want. He knows what Donatel is going to want out of him. It's just, where does Pettin fit in this whole thing, right? Because he's assistant head coach. So, who's going to make the final call? Who's going to have say? Who's calling the game? That's always been a question. And it's so important for O'Connell to have a defensive guy that can just handle that side of the ball, because if he's dialed in and he's actually calling the game, he has to, when the defense is on the field, he's got to just say, hey, you make those adjustments. I've got things I got to do with my guys on this side. So, outside of that, I think Modkins is the other big hire. He's the running back coach, was an offensive coordinator for a number of years in the NFL. It's all about protections, designing protections that work, and Modkins has done that as an offensive coordinator. So hopefully, he can help Cooper out.
One question I have for you, Pete, especially whenever we're talking about Donatel, his relationship with Vic Fangio, going back to Chicago with Denver, 3-4 defenses, that is the sticking point that everyone wants to focus on. Do you think those pieces are here to be able to do that? I know it's a multiple defensive set that Kevin O'Connell said, but if they have to go to that base side, is it feasible?
Well, I think it is. We've been a 4-3 defense since, forever here. Tony Dungy, we saw, this has been a 4-3 team, forever. Are some of the pieces there? Yeah, but we're a lot further away on defense than we are on offense. You look at even the cornerback position and how the Brashad Breeland thing, handled. You have Patrick Peterson. We all of a sudden kind of got old at the cornerback position. We're a veteran at the safety position. What, though, you see out of these 3-4 defenses is their strength is their outside linebackers. They have guys on the edges that are special, right? Daniil Hunter, can he be one of those guys? Absolutely. But you also need the other guys up front, the Donalds of the world, and those defensive ends, outside linebackers, because you're asking guys to take care of more than just one gap. So, yeah, Pierce and Tomlinson, they've played in 3-4s before, so they're familiar with it. The linebackers, we'll see how they fit into it, but there are going to be a lot more changes defensively than offensively.
For more on the hiring of Kevin O'Connell, let's go back to our Perch location, and that's where Tatum Everett and Paul Allen are standing by. Guys, how are you feeling about this new hire?
Yeah, you talk about all of the changes that are going to be happening, and a lot of them could be on the defensive side, and you start with free agency and the draft, and who is going to fit Ed Donatel and his new defensive system. I really liked what Kevin said about how he thinks that Ed is the kind of guy who will be able to defend the multiple schemes offenses like to dial up nowadays, and that he's really good at teaching that kind of a system.
Well, but if you're going to run a 3-4 defense, okay, and Ed Donatel comes from the Denver Broncos. Vic Fangio's name's been referenced a lot. And, you know, he was the head coach in Denver, but he was also an unbelievable defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears with Khalil Mack on one side, Leonard Floyd on the other, Roquan Smith as an inside linebacker, then Eddie Goldman, Akeem Hicks, and Bilal Nichols. Those are certain body types that you need for a 3-4 defense. And I just don't think we have en masse that type of personnel right now if they run a 3-4 base defense. Now, when you get to the draft with that word mentioned and it's quickly approaching, the last thing you want to be is predictable. And there is an edge rusher from Michigan, last name Ojabo, David Ojabo, where, I mean, it looks like somebody like that is who you have to get in the first round if you run a 3-4. But all cards are back on the table with free agency and the draft, because these guys have no past performances as a new general manager and a new head coach. Spielman did well in the draft mostly, but never made those giant trades up. So it's all unpredictable and very exciting.
It is a very exciting time, as of Billy's what's been mentioned this entire show. Fresh, new, a clean slate, and really the job only gets harder from today.
Tatum,
well, it not only gets harder because you're $15 million over the cap, but they can fix that, work with Kirk and everything. And Hobie, back to you. You didn't say thank you, Paul.
Appreciate it, Paul. I'll give you a thumbs up like you did to me. There we go. Thumbs up, PA. Much more thumbs up content coming up after this short break. We'll hear from Adam Thielen about the new hire of Kevin O'Connell when we return.
Welcome back to Vikings, a new era.
Well, one guy who is really excited about the new head coach, Kevin O'Connell, especially with an offensive background, that is Adam Thielen. And for more with the Vikings wide receiver on this new addition to the coaching staff, Gabe Henderson caught up with him one-on-one.
Yeah, that ultimate goal is the Super Bowl, and the new coach, Kevin O'Connell, just recently won a Super Bowl with the LA Rams. Bring him here now. When you heard the news of the Vikings officially hiring him as the head coach, your initial reaction?
Super excited. I couldn't be more excited about the direction of this organization, the hires that we've made, you know, the different things that this coaching staff and organization is doing to try to help us win games. You can see what ownership wants. They want to do what it takes to put the right people in place to help us win championships. And that's exciting as a player. You can tell that they really care about the players. They care about the city. They care about this organization. And we've seen that firsthand this offseason so far. And again, you know, with all the hirings, just really excited about the direction. Does that mean that it's guaranteed that we reach our goals? No, but it also, you know, it puts another chip on our shoulder to say, hey, like, now that we have good leadership, we have good hires, and they're only going to continue to hire good people. Now we got to do our part as players, and we have to train hard. We have to do the little things to prepare for next season, and it really falls on all of our shoulders to do our part. That's why it's the greatest team game there is, because it's not just one or two guys. There's a lot of guys it takes to have success, and we have to do our part, and that starts now.
Yeah, Adam, a lot of people have been talking about, with Kevin O'Connell, the Rams last year, they ran the most 11 personnel. 11 personnel basically means there's one extra receiver on the field, usually take a tight end or somebody off the field, which ultimately means, okay, we're about to spread this thing out and, air it out and run it up the middle, especially with a guy like Dalvin Cook at running back. But for you as a receiver, when you know a guy that's offensive minded is going to have multiple receivers on the field, there's going to be aggressive play calling. Like, how does that make you feel as a receiver?
Yeah, it's exciting. I think it put a little more motivation in me to get healthy and start feeling good and start making progress to be the best player I can possibly be. I think what's exciting, from what I've seen from afar is they're willing to kind of do what it takes to win. And I think the great thing from what I've heard is he's really excited to work with all the talent we have on offense and defense. We have a great running back. We have a great offense line that continues to grow, and we have a lot of weapons in the receiving tight end room. So that's exciting, and I think which is why we were so sure that this was going to be a great destination for a head coach. That there was a lot of positives that were already in place in this organization. That we thought that it'd be a great spot for any coach, and to be a spot that a lot of coaches would want.
All right, in true press conference fashion, it's time for our closing remarks after Kevin O'Connell met with the media today. And let's begin with Gabe Henderson. Gabe, what are some of your final thoughts as we heard from the Vikings' new head coach just a few minutes ago?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is that this offense, this team is going to be explosive. When I speak of explosives, I mean big chunks of yardage down the field. And when you have a young coach in Kevin O'Connell who understands how to win games, how to involve his players, I think that makes everyone excited. Like we just heard from Adam Thielen, he understands his offense is going to be more spread out. He's going to have more opportunities to make plays. And a guy in Justin Jefferson, too, he understands, okay, well, Cooper Kupp was their number one receiver. I'm sure Kevin O'Connell is going to try to use me the same way. So there is a lot of excitement across the board, especially when you have the number one running back in the NFL also. So defensive side of the ball, you got to figure that part out. But from this press conference today, I think all eyes are pointing forward to that ultimate goal of winning the Lombardi Trophy. Tatum, PA, your thoughts?
About buying into this culture mindset that they're trying to instill. Everyone's on the same page with that shared core vision. And along those lines of what Gabe talked about, these players want to go to the Super Bowl. They want to have what Coach O'Connell just won on Sunday. And to get there, there's a plan, and it's about the buy-in. And I just think that as long as that's established there in that first meeting, this could be a very exciting time.
But everything is new, and change can be hard, and change will be hard this year. But that doesn't mean it's bad, because you got to start somewhere. So patience are going to be required. But if I'm going to change, I want to change with Dalvin and JJ. So that's good.
We love to see it. Hobie, what do you guys think?
Tatum, thank you. Patience for the purple. That's what PA says. Dawn, what do you say?
You know what? Fresh energy, fresh legs, fresh arms. I say roll up the sleeves and just let's go. We know who he is. Let's go. Lots of work to be done.
And I think the other thing is you talk about Bud Grant and all these other coaches. They've all were great motivators. And you talk to John Randall after the press conference. Energy, right?
Yep.
That's what he's bringing to the table. The way he delivers the message, articulate, quick, to the point. Brings a sense of energy. Hopefully that's contagious, and I hope to see the Vikings play that way this year.
And also, it's all about partnership, too. What can Kwesi, Adofo-Mensah, and Kevin O'Connell accomplish together? We'll find out with the Combine coming up in just a few days. For Pete Bercich, Dawn Mitchell, Paul Allen, Tatum Everett, Gabe Henderson, I'm Hobie Artigue. We'll see you next time.